This is the darkest episode Gumball ever had. So dark it had to be re-edited before airing. What starts as a simple outburst turns into a journey through loneliness, anger, and depression. Stay until the end, because the twist completely changes how you'll see Gumball's world, and maybe even how you see your own.
And it can only be because I wished everyone to go away! No one cares anyway! I don't need anyone! Wait, what am I saying?
The episode that broke Gumball. This episode of The Amazing World of Gumball is infamous for being so dark it had to be rewritten before airing. Beneath its humor, it shows Gumball reaching an emotional breaking point, masking deep sadness and loneliness with anger. His wish for solitude erases his family, leaving him trapped in a world consumed by a black void, a metaphor for depression and isolation. Even toned down, it remains one of the show's boldest explorations of mental health. The origin of the conflict. The episode opens in the most Watterson way possible, with noise, chaos, and affection colliding all at once. Gumball is still in bed, craving a moment of peace, but his family has other plans. One by one, they storm into his room, each with their own demand, their own energy, their own definition of quality time. Darwin is the first, wide-eyed and enthusiastic. He reminds Gumball of a promise he made, something simple, something small, but in Darwin's mind incredibly important. It's not just about the activity itself, it's about the bond. Darwin wants his brother's attention, his time, his presence. Before Gumball can respond, Richard barges in, lazy as ever but with a smile. He insists that Gumball help with chores around the house. It's ironic. Richard is usually the one avoiding work, but here he piles responsibility onto Gumball, disguising it as a chance to help out. To Richard, it's family bonding. To Gumball, it's just another burden. Then Nicole arrives, determined and precise, always trying to balance work, family, and discipline. She wants Gumball to help her test out makeup, not for herself but on him, almost like an experiment. For Nicole, it's another way to connect, to engage, even if it feels unusual. For Gumball, it's yet another demand pulling him in a direction he doesn't want to go. Finally, Anais, the youngest but sharpest, comes in with her own request. She wants Gumball to teach her a kung fu move so she can stand up to a boy who's been bothering her. It's endearing. Anais is brilliant but still a child who looks up to her brother as a source of strength. Her request, though innocent, adds even more weight to the mountain of expectations already pressing down on him. Within moments, Gumball's room transforms from a place of rest into a circus of competing voices and clashing needs. Everyone wants a piece of him. Everyone is shouting over each other, and everyone believes their request is the most important. And here's the key. None of this is malicious. The Wattersons are being exactly who they are. Loud, loving, chaotic, needy. Their demands come from affection, not cruelty. But for Gumball, who woke up already tired and irritable, it feels suffocating. He can't process the noise, the pressure, or the sense that his own needs are being ignored. He yells out in frustration, insisting he doesn't want to do anything. But the words barely leave his mouth before his family swarms even closer, crowding his space, smothering him with love disguised as demands. And that's when he snaps. His outburst isn't just anger, it's desperation. He's not saying leave me alone because he hates them. He's saying it because he feels overwhelmed, cornered, and unseen. This opening sets the tone for the entire episode. It's a perfect metaphor for the experience of someone struggling with mental health, surrounded by people who care, yet unable to feel understood. What looks like laziness or irritation on the surface is really exhaustion and emotional overload. By the time Gumball finally bursts out, the stage is set for everything that follows. The wish for silence, the disappearance of his family, and the descent into loneliness and darkness. The wish and the loneliness. In their own clumsy way, the Wattersons try to cheer Gumball up. They crowd around him, not with distance or caution, but with physical affection. They pet him like he's a grumpy cat, scratching his head, patting his shoulders, surrounding him with laughter and touches. To them, this is love. Loud, silly, a little overwhelming, but still genuine. To Gumball, though, it feels suffocating. Instead of comfort, every pat and stroke just fuels his irritation. And then Richard, in a moment that is both comical and tragically misguided, offers advice. With his usual dopey grin, he tells Gumball to pretend to be happy until happiness eventually becomes real. On the surface, it sounds like fatherly wisdom. Fake it till you make it. But in practice, it's terrible advice for someone struggling with big emotions.
The paintings! They're changing! Actually, to be
Rather
honest,
than validating Gumball's feelings, Richard is telling him to suppress them, to put on a mask. It's the exact opposite of what Gumball needs. The words push him over the edge. Overwhelmed by their cheer, the constant affection, and now this advice to hide how he really feels, Gumball explodes. He screams at them to go away, to leave him alone, to give him space. And in that instant, his anger becomes a wish. He wants silence. He wants solitude. And suddenly, he gets it. The house falls eerily quiet. He turns around expecting to see their faces, but there's no one. The noise, the warmth, the chaos, all gone. The Wattersons have vanished as if they were never there at all. At first, Gumball feels vindicated. This is what he wanted, right? Peace and quiet. No demands, no shouting, no responsibilities pulling him in 4 different directions. For a brief moment, he relaxes into the silence, almost relieved that his outburst was answered so literally. But as the minutes tick by, the silence changes. What started as calm begins to feel heavy, unnatural. The house that was once bursting with life is now just empty. He tries to fill the time with activities he usually enjoys. TV, games, wandering around. But none of it feels the same without someone to share it with. The laughter that usually echoes through the walls is gone, and in its place is a hollow stillness that grows more unbearable with every second. This is where the metaphor deepens. Gumball's solitude isn't just about being alone in the house. It represents what happens when anger and sadness push people away. At first, isolation feels like a solution, like freedom. But quickly, it morphs into loneliness, stripping joy out of even the things that once brought happiness. His favorite shows, his toys, his distractions, all of them lose their meaning without connection. The silence becomes its own character in the episode, pressing down on Gumball, reminding him that his wish for solitude came at the cost of everything he actually needed. He wanted space, but what he got was emptiness. In just a few minutes, the episode transforms from noisy comedy to a stark exploration of loneliness. Gumball realizes too late that pushing away the people who love you may give you quiet, but it also gives you a void, and no distraction is powerful enough to fill it. Depression and its metaphors. Left alone, Gumball tries to distract himself the way so many of us do, by turning on the TV. But instead of comfort or distraction, he's confronted with a wall of negativity. Every channel he flips to only reinforces the emptiness he feels inside. The news is filled with despair, disasters, tragedies, and hopeless stories that make the world seem darker than ever. Commercials don't offer an escape either. They bombard him with impossible beauty standards, pictures of perfection that he knows he can never live up to. Instead of lifting him, the TV becomes a mirror reflecting back his own insecurities. This moment is powerful because it highlights a truth about depression. When you're already in a low place, even neutral things can feel oppressive. What others might shrug off as silly ads or background noise, Gumball interprets as proof that life is broken and meaningless. And then comes the music. In one of the most striking sequences, Gumball launches into a parody of Pharrell Williams' Happy. Except instead of singing about joy and sunshine, he twists the lyrics into a bleak anthem of misery. The melody is familiar, upbeat, almost mocking, but the words are heavy, filled with reminders of life's struggles, disappointments, and the feeling that happiness is unreachable. It's a dark joke, but also a raw expression of how depression turns even the most positive messages into something painful. Through this, the episode introduces metaphors for mental health disorders rarely touched in children's animation. Dissociation and alter egos. Gumball has always shown a tendency to fracture his identity, most clearly in the name, where his alter ego, Zack, emerges. Here, that same mechanism returns in a darker form. He hears a voice, his own but not his own, telling him he doesn't need anyone, that he hates his town, that isolation is strength. It's dissociation made visible, a split between the part of him that longs for connection and the part that wants to shut the world out forever. Psychotic depression.
It's a sofa. So maybe the darkness is all in my head. Boy, now how do I get out of it?
The episode also dips into imagery of hallucinations and delusional thinking. Gumball doesn't just feel sad, he sees the world itself morphing to match his inner turmoil. Everyday things take on twisted forms, mocking him or feeding his despair. This isn't simple anger or loneliness. It's the kind of deep, consuming darkness that blurs the line between thought and reality. His evil side tells him he's better off without anyone, planting intrusive thoughts that sound convincing because they echo his worst fears. These layers show how carefully the episode visualizes depression. Anger becomes a mask, dissociation becomes a voice, and hallucinations become scenery. Everything around Gumball bends to reflect his internal state. It's not just that he's sad, it's that sadness is rewriting his world. Even softened for broadcast, the metaphor is striking. Behind the comedy and parody, the amazing world of Gumball delivers a rare and uncomfortable truth. Depression doesn't announce itself with clarity. It disguises itself as irritation, laughter, or even silliness. And while the world keeps spinning, those suffering can feel trapped in a version of reality where every image, every sound, every thought confirms their worst fears. That they are alone, that they are broken, and that happiness is forever out of reach. The darkness and the original version. The turning point of the episode arrives with one of its most chilling visuals, the appearance of the Black Mass. At first, it creeps in almost unnoticed, a shadow on the edge of the frame, lingering like a storm cloud in the corner of Gumball's mind. But it doesn't stay small for long. The mass begins to grow, seeping into every space, covering walls, creeping across floors, swallowing doors and windows. One by one, the familiar colors of the Watterson home are drained away, replaced by an all-encompassing void. Gumball tries to fight it. He yells, he pushes back, he even tries to laugh it off as if it's just another obstacle in his weird cartoon life. But unlike other villains in the show, this darkness doesn't play along. It doesn't get scared. It doesn't trip into slapstick comedy. It keeps advancing, cold and unstoppable. Soon, Gumball's entire house is consumed, transformed from the cozy hub of family chaos into a prison of shadow. Every window he opens looks out to more black. Every door he tries to escape through collapses into emptiness. He is trapped, not just in his house, but in his own head. The symbolism is clear. The Black Mass isn't a monster from Elmore. It's depression itself. It represents the way sadness and loneliness expand when left unchecked, slowly devouring every corner of a person's life. What begins as a small feeling in the background becomes overwhelming, turning safe spaces into suffocating ones and cutting off all exits. Fans have long speculated about what the original cut of this episode contained, and the rumors are unsettling. According to interviews and online theories, the first version leaned even heavier into themes of self-isolation and self-destruction. In that draft, Gumball wasn't just trapped by the darkness, he actively gave into it. The story suggested he would lock himself away, banishing his own presence from the world, in what many interpreted as a metaphor for suicidal ideation. Of course, for a children's show, that was too far. The script was rewritten and softened, reshaping the Black Mass into a more abstract metaphor rather than a literal depiction of self-harm. But even in its edited form, the imagery is haunting. Watching Gumball wander alone through a house stripped of light feels heavy, uncomfortable, and eerily real to anyone who has experienced the way depression swallows joy and turns the familiar into something alien. What makes this sequence so powerful is that Gumball can't joke his way out of it. In most episodes, when things go wrong, he leans on humor, wild plans, or reckless antics to push forward. But here, none of those strategies work. The darkness ignores his antics. It doesn't care about punchlines. It forces him to face what he's been avoiding: the raw, terrifying weight of being alone with himself. The re-edited version still delivers an unforgettable metaphor: depression as a physical entity that takes away color, sound, and life until nothing is left but silence and shadow. The black mass shows us what despair looks like from the inside. A force that isn't just around you but inside you, feeding off your silence and growing stronger the more you try to deny it. In the end, whether in the rumored darker cut or the broadcast version, this sequence cements the episode as one of the boldest moments in the amazing world of Gumball. It pushed the boundaries of what a children's show could portray, daring to explore the terror of mental illness, not through lectures or dialogue, but through pure, unsettling imagery.
Hey! Is anyone there? What's this?
The resolution and the final message. After being swallowed whole by the black mass, after fighting shadows that only grew stronger the more he resisted, Gumball finally reaches a point of surrender. But instead of collapsing completely, he pauses. He breathes. And in that silence, something shifts. He begins to recognize that the darkness isn't an external monster, but a reflection of his own mind. This realization doesn't arrive like a thunderbolt. It's subtle, fragile, almost hesitant. Depression often doesn't vanish in a single moment of clarity, but here, the show gives us a metaphorical glimpse of how recognition is the first step toward healing. The darkness was never real in the physical sense. It was Gumball's sadness and anger manifesting, shaping the world around him into something unrecognizable. Once he sees it for what it is, its power begins to fade. What helps him find this clarity are two small but powerful memories. Richard's clumsy piece of advice, pretend to be happy until happiness is real, and his promise to spend time with Darwin. On the surface, Richard's advice seemed hollow, even damaging, earlier in the episode, but now it takes on a different meaning. It isn't about faking happiness or ignoring pain, it's about recognizing that even in the worst moments, the possibility of joy still exists. Acting on small steps, leaning into connection, can plant the seeds of recovery. And Darwin's memory represents something even deeper, the bonds of love and friendship that anchor him to reality. The twist that follows is heartbreaking and uplifting all at once. His family was never gone. They didn't vanish into thin air. They were there the whole time, knocking on his door, waiting for him, loving him in their chaotic way. The loneliness he felt, the emptiness that consumed him, didn't come from their absence but from his perception. He was so overwhelmed by his own emotions that he couldn't see the people standing right beside him. This is where the episode lands its most profound message. Loneliness isn't always about being alone. Sometimes it's about feeling disconnected, even when surrounded by love. Depression has a cruel way of blinding people to the care and support that exists around them, convincing them they are isolated when, in reality, they are not. Even softened for broadcast, this remains one of the most striking portrayals of mental health in children's animation. The imagery of the black void makes visible what so many feel but cannot describe. The sense of being consumed by despair, of watching the world lose its color and meaning. But the ending provides something essential: hope. It tells viewers that while depression can distort reality, while it can make the loving voices of families sound like noise or disappear altogether, connection is still there. Love can cut through the silence. Relationships, even imperfect ones, can be lifelines in the darkest hours. The balance of despair and hope makes this episode unforgettable. It dares to show the weight of mental illness while also reminding us that darkness is not the whole story. Beneath the shadows, there is still light, and sometimes all it takes is remembering a promise, a laugh, or the touch of someone who cares to find the way back. Gumball's darkest moment reminds us that loneliness often comes from within, but love and connection can break through any void. Even in chaos, family is the light that pulls us back. If this episode moved you, don't leave without subscribing and sharing your thoughts. Which Gumball moment hit you the hardest?